For 2 decades, asking certain questions about September 11th would get you instantly labeled a conspiracy theorist. But what if some of those questions weren't so crazy after all? Tonight, as momentum builds for declassification of long-held government documents, we examine evidence that mainstream scientists, military intelligence officers, and fire protection engineers can no longer ignore. What exactly did researchers find in the World Trade Center dust? Why did the government buy and destroy thousands of copies of a military intelligence officer's memoir? And what about that 47-story building that collapsed despite no plane hitting it? World Trade Center 7? Well, these aren't fringe questions anymore, and the answers might change everything that you thought that you knew. Now, the shocking truth about American health also can't be hidden anymore, like 9/11, questions that demand answers. A recent study reveals that nearly half of all U.S. adults have high blood pressure, yet only 1 in 4 has it under control. This silent killer threatens millions while the medical establishment pushes expensive pharmaceuticals. That's why I rely on this revolutionary formula with white mulberry leaf and cinnamon bark powder, clinically proven to naturally regulate blood pressure, balance blood sugar, and improve cholesterol levels. It's part of taking control of your health when the systems fail us. So get up to 40% off during this special promotion at boostwithgary.com. You'll find it linked down below. Now here's the moment I never thought that I would see. Tucker Carlson. That's right, Tucker Carlson. The man who used to mock anybody who raised a question about what happened on that day. Now digging deep into some of those questions, seeking the answers that we've long known. Building 7? Come on. Even seasoned demolitions experts have called it, without even knowing what it was, a controlled demolition. Scientists sifting through the dust. What have they found? Thermite? Where does that come from? Is that native in building construction and buildings in New York? Who owned the insurance contracts for those buildings? And who was that guy that said, pull it, moments before Building 7 decided to just collapse in its own footprint? Well, these are questions I never thought that I would ever hear Tucker Carlson raise. But he had a guest on that has now completely opened up the conversation again. It happened just a few days ago. Tucker Carlson's latest episode with Kurt Weldon, former representative, goes over why Hillary Clinton had to murder Muammar Gaddafi. Quote, but you think the people who are hiding the truth about 9/11 are capable of murder? He says, absolutely. Let's listen to this clip before we dive deeper.
The people who are hiding the truth about 9/11 are capable of murder.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, I guess that would be obvious since 3,000 people were murdered that day.
Just like Libya. We were the ones that caused Gaddafi's death because Hillary Clinton played a game over there. And I was the one that went over there during the war. Gaddafi asked me to come over. I took a Biden staffer and a Bush staffer and a film crew leader from ABC One in New York, Larry Menti, with me, and a cameraman, because I didn't want the CIA to set me up. I hand-carried the letter back from Gaddafi offering to resign. The U.S. didn't want him to resign. They wanted to kill him.
Why?
Because Gaddafi, and I met him 3 times. I took Biden on my second trip to Libya, by the way. He went with me when I spoke to the whole country. At every meeting I had with Gaddafi, he wanted 2 things. He wanted to unite the African continent into a group of nations economically, like European standard gold, like the European economy. He wanted to based on the gold standard. And the U.S. and Europe didn't want that. And the other thing is they wanted control of his oil, and they wanted control of his sovereign wealth. So Gaddafi had to go. That's outrageous, and it's wrong.
Yeah, but that, I think, sounds right to me.
I mean, but we've allowed so many of our kids to be drawn into conflicts, to be killed. And these people doing this they've never served in any capacity in our country. They've never been in the military. They've never served on a fire ground. And it's outrageous that they think they can get away with this and sit back and make all this money. It's outrageous.
I couldn't agree more.
Let's dig a little bit deeper, shall we? Before Kevin Ryan says that before he co-opts 9/11 truth for personal gain, Tucker Carlson needs to publicly apologize to Stephen Jones, DRG, and the families of the millions of victims of the 9/11 wars. Until he does that, looks like a CIA narrative manager and shameless opportunist. Remember what I just told you?
Yes. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Hey, good to see you after we met briefly at the event in 2008 in Minneapolis for Ron Paul.
Oh, that was fun. I remember that.
But you had to leave early. What happened? Why did you bail on Ron Paul?
I'll tell you what. I didn't bail on Ron Paul. It's when Jesse Ventura got up and started saying 9/11 was an inside job.
He didn't say that.
Yeah, he did say that.
No, he said that it was curious why the FBI, had Bin Laden on
Look, I got it. I was there, and but
so you had to leave because that one controversial.
I was enraged by it. It wasn't controversial.
You were personally enraged.
Let me answer your question.
Sure.
It wasn't controversial. It was stupid. And if there's any evidence that the government was behind 9/11, I believe anything if there's evidence, but there isn't any. So knock it off. That's my view.
Okay, but
and I said that to him.
Sure, but one stupid person says something stupid at a Ron Paul event.
Yeah, I hate that. And by the way, I am open to almost any crackpot theory about anything. It's just on that subject. Come on, you know what I mean? That's too much. That even for me.
So, just out of curiosity, then, what's your take on Building 7? Which explanation do you believe?
Come on.
No, that's a serious question. Which explanation did it?
Which explanation?
There's two explanations. It was either it was pulled or it was isolated pockets of fire in the building that were sort of side effect from the two towers coming down that brought it down.
This is a no-win conversation, so I'm not going to continue it. But let me just say one thing: my macro view is the obvious one, which is the buildings came down because a bunch of nutcases flew a plane into them.
Okay, so are you still supporting Ron Paul?
I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm supporting Ron Paul. I like Ron Paul. I've always liked Ron Paul.
So, are you supporting anybody in the race this year?
No, I don't support. I don't even.
You're an objective journalist.
I don't even vote. I'm hardly objective. I'm honest. I'm not objective.
Certainly not afraid to speak your mind.
No, I'm not. No, you can assess my views. They're very clear.
You have any
but
message?
I hate that 9/11 crap. Wish they just kick those people out.
I mean, aunt was supposed to be on the 93rd floor.
Really?
It's important for people whose families were involved to know the truth, whether or not the government was involved or whether it was terrorists. But there's a history of government-sponsored terror throughout the past century.
Exactly.
So what do you mean kick them out?
I don't know. Whatever.
Anybody who's the 9/11 truther should be kicked out of the country?
Of course not. I don't even believe in parking tickets. I mean, please. I just don't. I think that people, before saying something that heavy, ought to present real evidence and not just.
Okay. Oh, man. How wild is this, right? Okay, let's dig a little bit deeper. Here we have Richard Gage, somebody I know personally. Tucker understands now World Trade Center 7 is kryptonite to the deep state. They've tried so hard to hide the videos of its collapse because once we realize they blew up a skyscraper in front of everyone on 9/11 and lied about it, their house of cards will be at risk. Watch.
Work for the INA largest.
What began to make me wonder, and I have no idea what happened on 9/11, but it's very clear that there's a lot of lying around it, was the collapse of Building 7. And all the wackos would be like, Building 7, Building 7. I'd be like, shut up, wackos. And then if you just sort of look at it, you're like, well, that is very weird, actually. No plane hit that building. And does this happen a lot when buildings catch fire? Right, okay.
Besides being a firefighter, I work for the INA, largest insurance company in North America. I was responsible for training their fire protection, arson people for 18 years. That doesn't happen. You never have a 47-story building just collapse, which this did.
What began to make me wonder, and I have no...
I mean, I am totally shocked that we have Tucker Carlson actually and finally addressing these points. I mean, it literally blows my mind. I mean, you saw the clip of him discussing, like, oh, this is all it's crackpottery and all this, but now he's actually talking about it. Oh, here we have. Let's go to Richard Gage. Here he is. Took 23 years to make it on screen, but here it is. According to architect Richard Gage, the Twin Towers in Building 7 were brought down by controlled demolitions. Fires never brought down a steel frame high-rise building ever. Watch this.
A wacky idea.
Well, I'm an architect of 20 years, member of the American Institute of Architects, and have been studying steel-framed, fireproof buildings for about that long.
We asked that for clarification because as we get into this, we want people to make sure that you're not just somebody with a wacky idea.
Right.
Okay, you come with some science to you. What is the official reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center towers?
Well, we're told that the planes hit the buildings, and there was an explosion and a fire, and about an hour and a half later, in the case of the North Tower, the buildings collapsed due to structural weakening due to the fires. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we don't have large gradual deformations associated with collapses, and fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame high-rise building at all, ever. And what we have, unfortunately, is the evidence in the Twin Towers and the third skyscraper to collapse that day, which most people don't know anything about it. We have the evidence of the 10 key features of controlled demolition. In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint at free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
So what, a 47-story building?
Yeah, this is called Building 7, right? A football field away from the Twin Towers. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we're showing is left what happened. In fact, right is a controlled where you are using, or the people who made this happen, used demolition.
Indeed, and this is a direct
devices.
comparison. And you can see that, indeed, almost free fall speed, free fall acceleration through 40,000 tons of structural steel. That is uncanny. So we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation as a result of this evidence and the evidence in the World Trade Center that is very explosive. Almost every architect and engineer we show this information to agrees with us that these are controlled demolitions. If we can get them to look at the information, because obviously the implications of a controlled demolition are dark for our country, because that means somebody besides Al-Qaeda was involved, because these have to be easily 3 of the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon.
Yeah, 3 of the most highly secured buildings outside the Pentagon. Check this out. Must-watch clip. Tucker Carlson, do you believe there were people in the U.S. government who knew 9/11 was going to happen and allowed it to happen on purpose?
The design includes the footage, including the firefighter, the footage of the firefighter communication between him and the command center. You can hear him as plain as day saying, I'm on the impact floor, floor 78. We have 2 fires here. We can control them. And he's comfortable. He's not worrying about the building collapsing. He just walked up 38 floors and the whole building collapses. Tucker, it's a big lie. They are the only...
He just told Tucker it was a big lie. Wow. Let's keep digging a little bit deeper, shall we? What aren't they telling us? Too many unanswered questions. Time to look at all the evidence. Both sides of the debate deserve to be heard. The establishment fears this open discussion. Scientists found unusual materials in the World Trade Center dust that some claim are high-tech incendiaries. When tested in calorimeters, they showed surprising energy release. But the government doesn't show the findings.
Then I suggested, look, if these chips really are of an explosive nature or an incendiary of some type, then all it would take would be to put one of these things in a calorimeter and see what kind of energy we got out as we heated them up. I know they're energetic, so there's no question about that. I mean, the calorimeter's not going to lie to us.
As my materials scientist friend said, they blow up. We found that the energy release is very rapid, so it gives you a very narrow spike in the machine. We compared our spike that we got with a spike from known nanothermite, which is produced at a military laboratory. Their measured energy released with known nanothermite was less than these red-gray chips.
These chips have something to do, I mean, they're like an incendiary.
This pyrotechnic explosive material should not be in the World Trade Center dust, particularly in these large quantities. I mean, there are people in these buildings. What are these tons of explosives doing in there? Unless somebody really wanted those buildings to come down completely.
I mean, the evidence is there. let's keep going. Here is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer claims military intelligence identified 4 hijackers before 9/11. Why were his meetings with the FBI canceled? Why wasn't this in the 9/11 Commission report? Legitimate questions deserve answers. This is on CNN, discussing prior knowledge.
Did we know the year before 9/11 that one of the hijackers was a terrorist threat?
Army Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer has gone public with his charge that Able Danger, a military intelligence project he worked with in 2000, identified Mohammed Atta, even pulled up his picture along with 3 other 9/11 hijackers as possible al-Qaeda members.
We found the identities of 4 of the 9/11 hijackers prior to 9/11.
But he says beginning in September 2000, 3 meetings he set up with the FBI were each canceled by military lawyers. Shaffer also says he remembers telling then 9/11 Commission staff at a meeting in Afghanistan about Atta and what the intelligence unit found back in 2000. And he was surprised that it did not show up in the Commission's report.
I'm told confidently by the person who did move the material over that the 9/11 Commission received 2 briefcase-size containers of documents. I can tell you for a fact that would not be 1/20th of the information that Able Danger consisted of during the time we spent.
Why would our government buy and destroy 10,000 copies of Tony Shaffer's book, Dark Heart? What information was so sensitive they didn't want American people to see? The people deserve transparency. What happened to our right to know?
Memoirs are called.
So you're saying elements of the U.S. government worked really, really hard to hide the fact that they could have prevented 9/11.
What I can tell you unequivocally is there was a cover-up. Tony Shaffer got approval from his commanding general after this whole thing happened. His memoirs are called Dark Heart. So he wrote the book. He went to his commanding general to review the book as his protocol. His commanding general said, fine, Tony, there's nothing there that's a problem. Publish it. Tony publishes the book. Our deep state finds out he's publishing the book. A cease and desist order is issued against the publisher. Stop publishing the book. It's too late. Our government buys all 10,000 copies of the first edition of Dark Heart with taxpayer money, and they destroy them. So I asked Tony, you have the original version of the book, right? Yes, here it is, Congressman. You have the redacted version, right? Yes, here it is. What did they want out of your book that was so sensitive? What secret information were you giving, Tony? What classified information did your boss not see? He said, Congressman, the only thing they wanted out of my book was the fact that I named Zelikow and that I had briefed him in advance. That, Tucker, is treason.
Treason. Building 7 collapses, raises even more legitimate engineering questions. No plane hit it. Fire protection experts debating how a 47-steel building could collapse.
And what began to make me wonder, and I have no idea what happened in 9/11, but it's very clear that there's a lot of lying around it, was the collapse of Building 7. And all the wackos would be like, Building 7, Building 7. I'd be like, shut up, wackos. And then if you just sort of look at it, you're like, well, that is very weird, actually. No plane hit that building. And does this happen a lot when buildings catch fire? Right, okay.
Besides being a firefighter, I work for the INA, largest insurance company in North America. I was responsible for training their fire protection, arson people for 18 years. That doesn't happen. You never have a 47-story building just collapse, which this is.
156 witnesses reported hearing what they sound like explosions. Were they structural failures or something else? And why did news anchors openly discuss demolition theories on 9/11? All perspectives deserve to be examined.
I think a bomb went off in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. Then another plane hit the other building. I just feel a little shook up because I got blasted.
As we were coming out, we passed the lobby. There was no lobby. But I believe the bomb hit the lobby first, and a couple of seconds in the first plane hit.
Explosion on the South World Trade happened, and I said, this is something we have to do. We have to back out. That's when I was squad again in the second explosion.
We were just dragging people along with us, and then when we came outside, it just blew. The tower blew.
Boom, 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 boom. And as the bombs were going, people just started running. I just turned around, and I just started running for my life.
I looked at which people in the fire department of New York had been in a position to directly witness the destruction of the Twin Towers, and I wanted to know how many described what they saw without mentioning explosions, and how many used explosions and similar terms, which I list, like blast, to describe what they witnessed.
Check this out. Okay, here's some more on that. Elvin Rodriguez, Red Zone World Trade Center survivor, explaining how ground shook before the towers fell.
Before the buildings fell, the South Tower fell first. I'm standing right in front of the South Tower, and the sidewalk shook. Everyone looked at each other. No one said a word. Everything went from like chaos to quietness. See the firemen start running out the building after the sidewalk shook, and approximately maybe like 30 seconds later, it collapsed. And the dust cloud chased me down Fulton Street and consumed me.
Your first name again?
My first name is Elvin Rodriguez. I'm a Red Zone on World Trade Center survivor, and definitely the sidewalk shook before the buildings fell.
Before the buildings fell.
Before, like about 30-40 seconds before the building fell.
But what about William Rodriguez? Years ago, I actually hosted him in Chicago to present his story, and I actually held the key that unlocked the doors in the stairwells for the firefighters. The key that saved so many people's lives. William Rodriguez was decorated by George W. Bush for his heroism on that day, and his story was omitted from the 9/11 Commission report. Why? Well, let's listen to some of that testimony. Here he is with Jesse Ventura.
No. William Rodriguez was a maintenance worker at number 2 World Trade Center. He has a story that not only contradicts the official 9/11 account, but shakes it to its very foundation.
At 8:46, while we're talking in front of the office, we hear bah! An explosion very loud. Pushes upwards. All the walls shaked. They cracked. The false ceiling fell on top of us. The sprinkler system got activated. Water started spewing everywhere. Everybody screaming in horror. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Now, was this a result from the plane hitting?
No. This is before the plane hitting the tower.
So this explosion
came from below. But the first thing that I thought it was that it came from the mechanical room that was on the basement number 2. I went to say, it may be when we hear bah! All the way on the top of the building, and I speculated that it was the plane hitting the tower.
So these two explosions were completely separate?
Completely separate.
The official 9/11 story says hijacked jets brought down the towers, not explosive devices.
If you can remember, how much time would you say was between the two explosions?
6 to 7 seconds difference.
That close?
That close. And I wasn't the only one that felt this. There were the 14 people inside the office.
Did all you people tell this to the 9/11 Commission?
I testified for the 9/11 Commission behind closed doors.
Why behind closed doors?
Well, my speculation was that they didn't want the story to be out.
How does the last man out get left out of the 9/11 Commission report? We've definitely got the makings of a conspiracy.
Oh, but here's more from William Rodriguez testifying of what he heard.
I thought it was, and all of a sudden we hear boom! I thought it was a generator that blew up on the basement. And I said to myself, oh my God, I think it's a generator. And I was going to verbalize it. When I finished saying that in my mind, I hear boom! Right on the top, pretty far away. So it was a difference between coming from the basement and coming from the top. And everybody started screaming, and a person comes running into the office saying, explosion, explosion, explosion. He got his hand extended, and all the skin was pulled from his under his arm, all the way to the top of the fingertips, and he was hanging on both arms. Hanging and hanging. And then I look at his face, and he was missing parts on his face. And I said, what happened? What happened? And he said, the elevators, the elevators. And when there were many explosions, and when I actually talk about those explosions, they said that, well, there were so many kitchens in the building, and they have probably those gas canisters, And I said, I don't believe that because the building was a Class A building. There are very strict guidelines for what you can put in a kitchen. And I really doubt it was gas. So there was a lot of misconceptions of what happened on that day in terms of the explosion. But up to date, I haven't received an actual explanation about the different explosions that I had on the upper floors and all the way to the top.
Yeah. So, I applaud Tucker Carlson for bringing this to light. But the truth is, we need to get to the bottom of this. It's not a conspiracy. Americans deserve all the facts. So keep asking questions and don't let anyone shut down legitimate debate. So we've explored some of the most compelling questions surrounding the 9/11 tragedy that demand further investigation. From the unusual materials discovered in the World Trade Center dust to Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer's claims that military intelligence identified several hijackers before the attacks. There are legitimate concerns that deserve attention. The collapse of Building 7 remains particularly puzzling to fire protection engineers, given that no plane hit it. And the government's decision to reportedly buy and destroy thousands of copies of Schaefer's memoir, Operation Dark Heart, only fuels questions about what information they didn't want released. Over 150 witnesses report a hearing what sounded like explosions before or during the building's collapse. Testimony that doesn't fit neatly into the official narrative. This isn't about promoting fringe theories. It's about Americans' right to question and seek transparency about one of the most consequential events in our history. The families of 9/11 victims deserve nothing less. Support our quest for truth by visiting the link in the description, shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.